Prairie View, TCU, Cody Campbell, these are unequivocally the three biggest games on Baylor's football schedule this year, and it might surprise you.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am your host, Cam Stuart. It is a Wicker Wednesday from the car. We are back in the car. Sydney Wicker of KCEN Channel 6. We talked a lot about Canada at the end of the episode last week. Happy Canada Day to you, Sydney Wicker.
Thank you. I know the beginning of "Oh Canada, our home and native land." That's it. But
you don't
that's
have
a good
it down
start.
in French yet, do you? No.
One step at a time. Yeah. I did study Spanish in high school for 2 years, and still, I know a little bit. Not a ton. And I've got a 175-day streak on Duolingo for Italian, so maybe French will be next.
Well, yeah, it's distant third. Unless you're moving to Quebec, you might not need that anytime soon. We're not going anywhere near Quebec today, folks. So don't you worry. And I don't know how many of them even celebrate Canada Day. But we are talking about some changes in the eligibility rules. Again, I talked about that in the last show, but here's how it can directly affect Baylor. They might be welcoming a player back to their basketball roster. That would be a huge addition to the group. Also, some other big-time football schools are making a lot of revenue off of something that Baylor just refuses to do. Is it finally time for them to do that? But where we start is what we teased, the three biggest games on the Baylor football schedule this year. I think, Sydney, we talked about the biggest before. These things ebb and flow when we get new storylines. So I wanted to get the three out there with our storylines attached as to why these are the biggest games on the schedule. Quite frankly, I'll start with the cliche. They are all super important. When you are going on this run in a bad way that Baylor's been on the last 5 seasons, and Dave Aranda's seat is as hot as it is, they all really, really matter. But sneak preview, at least for mine, Prairie View is not going to end up on this list. Louisiana Tech is not on this list. We were talking about the biggest games on the schedule. You want to go first, Sydney? You want to do your number 3 first?
Yeah, we'll start from the bottom, build our way up to number 1, right? Keep everybody on the edge of their seat here. Number 3 for me, in a must win for Dave Aranda, need to get the job done, is going to be the start of conference play, Colorado. I think you got to get that win. Last time they played Colorado was in Boulder a couple years ago. I had just started in Waco. I remember watching that game and I was like, okay, this is what we're getting into. So I think to start conference play, you need a win. You got to beat Colorado. This Colorado team is going to have a lot of question marks again, just like they did last year. So I think this is not only a statement opportunity for Baylor to start off conference play with a win. It's at home. There's so many boxes that it checks off. I think you have to win this game if you're Dave Aranda.
I think we learned a lot about Baylor in that game.
Yeah.
First conference game, a team that finished behind you last year. Not easy. Not many of those, right? And a team that probably comes in with even more question marks than Baylor does. I know they had a good transfer portal class. That's kind of a pencil that in every year thing with Deion Sanders. It's about whether that comes to fruition. It obviously didn't last year. It did in his first year. We will see. That I think that's a great point. We're going to learn a lot about them. Home game, totally. Speaking of a game where we're going to learn a lot about the Baylor Bears early on. As early on as we can get. My number 3, at Auburn, Atlanta, on September the 5th, the first game of the season. Obviously, revenge factor here. That was not fun last year. So did you have fun last year?
Not really. I mean, I hated that it was on a Friday night. I barely got to watch it because Friday Night Lights, took priority for me. It just was it just was disappointing. There was so much hype. I think we were all just like so excited. It was at home, under the lights, chrome domes. Like there was so many good elements last year. It just was disappointing. And that was our first taste of really what the season ended up becoming. And so, yeah, I think, you mentioned it, revenge game. I debated putting this one in my top 3. I just kind of decided against it. And I'm glad that you picked it, Kim, because it's big in the sense of it's a big game. And they, if they win this, I think it does a lot for Baylor. But for me, when I was going through it, I was like, I don't know. Does it really affect them later down the road? I don't know. It could.
Yeah.
It could not. It is week 1.
And I think what's interesting too here, beyond the revenge standpoint, is like Auburn. I think there are reasons for Auburn fans to be excited. Who knows? They'll probably run with this. I think there are reasons for Auburn fans to be excited, but I don't think they're being predicted to be a player in the SEC this year. This is not like you're not going against Georgia here. They beat your butt last year when you had a better team and you were at home. So I'm not saying that Baylor should be a favorite to win or anything like that, but I think it's not the most daunting task in the world to go and beat Auburn. And obviously that'll be our first look at DJ Lagway. First impressions there. He has played SEC defenses before. I actually don't think he ever played Auburn, coincidentally enough. But the other thing, too, is you got ran all over last year, mainly by Jackson Arnold. But you couldn't stop a nosebleed in that game. Now, if you're getting run over this year, it could be thanks in part to Bryson Washington. He's not at the top of their depth chart, but if you're going to get, 200 yards ran against you, then Bryson Washington is probably going to have a hand in that. So there is like a pride piece there from a couple of different angles here. I just think this is massive in terms of the tone of your season, because they will be underdogs and should be underdogs in this game. But if they lose, we're right back into the cycle of why didn't they fire Dave Aranda? This is going to keep happening. This team's just like last year, maybe worse. It just that cesspool kind of starts. That cesspool of negativity starts right off the bat if you lose that game, even if Auburn is the better team. So that's my number 3.
I like that you also point out too, like stopping the run is going to be so huge. This is going to be a really good test for this Baylor defense, right from the beginning of the season. They've got a chance to kind of right their wrong from last year, and Dave Aranda has a chance to just focus on being the head coach here and to continue to just, let his defense do their work and see what happens. So I really like that as a number 3, Cam. I
think so too. Thank you. Let's move on to number 2, and I will try not to laugh whenever we say number 2. I'm a child here. Sydney Wicker, your number 2 game of the year for Baylor football.
This was so hard for me, and I looked so much at the last 3 weeks of the season for Baylor, and I debated, like, where do we go with this of what Baylor needs to win? And it's hard because, like, I want to say Tech. I really want to say Tech because, that would just be amazing. But I really look at BYU as an opportunity for them on the road, and then they come home after that to host Tech, and then they've got Houston on the road to end the season. I also thought about Houston as another opportunity too, just because that game is they lost last year. It's the last game of the season. Like, it means a lot to play those games in November to round out the season like that. But I'm going to go with BYU here. I think if they could get a win that means something in November, this is going to tell us a lot about this Baylor football team. And 2, if we're at a point in the season where things haven't gone well for Baylor, or you're looking at potentially if they don't have their head coach at that point of the season, could this team still turn around and do something? And I think that BYU game is going to be a really big test for them. It's November 14th. It's going to be cold on the road in Utah. It's, that's going to be a tough environment, but I think if they win, it tells us a lot about this team, and who they are in November defines a lot about who they are as a team overall.
And I just love that, it's going to be comfortably the best atmosphere they play in all year. Again, we talked about the Pro Stadium in Atlanta. There's going to be plenty of Auburn fans there, but BYU is something else. And I think it's the best environment in our conference. As someone who has been to a night game in Provo, it is as good as everyone says it is. So that, and Dave Aranda's teams have, at first in fact, I think back to that game in 2022, the whole story was, man, he can't win on the road. And then it was, they can't win at home. And it's that is a huge environment to be thrust into. That is the beginning of that torrid 3-week stretch that you talked about. We'll kind of learn if Baylor has the cojones, because I think they'll have a decent record at that point. I don't think it's going to be as bad as some people think. But that is a point that I'll bring up later on in one of my selections, because when we come back, we're going to have my number 2 and both of our number 1's most important games of the Baylor football season. And I'm telling you, one of these I'm going to go completely off the rails on in hopefully a good way.
Not you, Cam.
I know. Please stop the presses. Warn your grandmother. I'm about to go off the rails on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here. And let me tell you, I was there in Foxborough Monday afternoon. Myself and Locked On Big 12 host Drake Seatoll were there. And it was one of the coolest experiences I have ever had in my life, sports or otherwise. It was just so cool from the moment we stepped in to the moment we sat in traffic leaving the place. It is one of the best sporting events I've ever been to. The atmosphere, the people, the environment, the game itself, absolutely incredible. And when you watch that game, Germany versus Paraguay, you understood that every moment matters. One goal can completely change the energy of a game or change the outcome like that. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Well, now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match and give you the feeling that I had in Foxborough from your couch with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means even more on bonus bets. All you have to do is turn in your token. And who doesn't love rooting for goals? Like that's what we're doing here. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started right now. Once again, that is FanDuel.com to get started today. Every game is important in tournament soccer. And as I bring in Sydney Wicker on this Wicker Wednesday, every game has a bit of importance to Baylor this season, but there are some that just mean a little bit more. I'm not talking about the SEC anymore. I think when we did just our one most important game, I believe this might have been Sydney's pick. I am using it as number 2. Okay. And they play like number 2 against this team. I am looking ahead to October the 17th. My number 2 selection, number 2 most important game for Baylor on the year, is home against TCU. Biggest rivalry they have. Okay. That's the big first point here. And as much as I hate to say it, but I have alluded to it on this show quite a bit, TCU is kind of what you're trying to be right now if you're Baylor. Like you ultimately want to long-term, get into that BYU, Utah, Texas Tech category, just in terms of competitiveness, not money or anything like that, competitiveness. But you're a long way from that. And Sydney, this might sound sacrilegious, but I think TCU is your next goal, to be them, because even on years where they're calling for their coach to be fired, they're 8-4. I'd love to string a couple of 8-4s together if I'm Baylor, no matter who the coach is. If Dave Aranda can pull it off, go right ahead. Let's get some 8-4s in here. So that might seem weird to say, but before I go on to my next point, I'm wondering your thoughts on that. That I would just like to be TCU at this point. A down year for them, like a down year is 6-6, and even their not fun years are 8-4.
Yeah, I think you bring up such a good point of a bad year for them isn't really a bad year. Like Baylor fans would be happy to just be bowl eligible, to be that close. And, I think that's kind of the standard of college football right now. If you're not at least having 8-4 seasons, you got to go. Like, this isn't good. And we see that in the SEC all the time. I mean, programs could have 9 wins and they're like, that's not enough. We're not in the college football playoffs. You're out. So this is now the standard and the peak of college football that we've reached. So Baylor fans, I think they would be excited about an 8-win season. A 9-win season would be fantastic. So yeah, you got to take a page out of TCU's playbook if you want to get there. And sometimes you got to become the team you want to beat in order to beat them.
And here's where I'm going to get off the rails a little bit.
Oh no, buckle up.
Speaking of standards.
Let me just lock in the car.
I want to have a thought. I have a thought. I want to have a thought. I do have a thought about standards in college football and how it comes to college football coaches. Now, people are going to think this comparison is crazy, but I'm going to go with it anyway. Does the name John Cooper mean anything to you, Sydney? He's a little before both of our times.
No, I can't say.
and to be fair, is not a name that's very well known across the annals of great historic coaches in college football. But John Cooper coached at Ohio State for 13 seasons, okay? He won the Big Ten 3 times. 3 times. He won the Rose Bowl. He won the Sugar Bowl. He's a college football Hall of Famer, and he won 68% of his games for his career. The only Buckeye coach with more wins than John Cooper is Woody Hayes. He's more wins than Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer and even, Ryan Day. Like, he should be thought of as the pantheon, like one of the best coaches at one of the best college football programs ever. Except there's one little problem. They were not all too sad to see John Cooper leave Columbus in 2000 because even for all those great accolades, he was 2-10-1 against Michigan. 2-10-1. Because in college football, that stuff matters. That matters. And if we want Baylor and TCU to be a rivalry on the national stage, not at the level of Michigan, Ohio State, but the way that it matters to our fan bases, that has to matter. And you can point to, you can point to whatever success Dave Aranda had early on in his Baylor career. But at the end of the day, he is 1-5 against TCU. That has to matter. It has to. And he doesn't have a great record against pretty much everyone else. So I know I'm beating a dead horse a little bit. But that game has to matter. And if he wins that game, it has to matter, right? It has to hold some weight of like, hey, this is a pretty good team in our conference every year. They're our biggest rival, and it's only the second time he's ever beaten them. So that's why TCU is my number 2 game. Do you have your number 1? Do you have thoughts on number 2?
Yeah, I love that was your number 2. That's my number 1. I feel like, that game has to be number 1 because you can't lose it. And I think with Dave Aranda and the season that, he needs to have, this is the breaking point. If you're having an okay season and you lose that game, you could be gone by that Monday. Like, that really is the tipping point, I think, of the season. Plus, by that point, you've already had 2 other Big 12 games in the books. One of those is going to be against Arizona State, so that's going to be a big one. But it's a chance to really prove why they kept you and why you deserve to stay. So I think that it's big because it's not only big for Baylor, but it's big for Dave Aranda. And it's halfway through the season. We'll be at a midway point where we can reevaluate and see how the season has unfolded so far. And that'll tell you a lot about where this team is. Plus, it's a rivalry game. You have to get this game back. Last year, it was in your hands and you let it slip. And you have to get this game back. And it matters. I love all the points you just brought up about why the rivalry needs to matter and why this game is so important and why it's on both of our lists. Like, this is a must-win game for Baylor this year, and I don't think there's any exception to it.
And like these kinds of things at major programs, like there's a baggage tag on them. Butch Davis was great at Miami, but he only beat Florida State 1 time. Peyton Manning, to use a player example, Tennessee's greatest player of all time, never beat Florida. People remember these things. People do. So that's why it's near the top of my list and at the top of your list. So my number 2, Sydney's number 1, TCU. Of course. My number one, though, I'm going Texas Tech on November
Okay.
21st. I mean, I'm just looking no further than it's the best team in your conference, and they're coming to your building in November. You know, if it's the conference opener, that's still cool. But like, we're talking late in the season, the penultimate game, if I'm not mistaken, in the regular season will be at home to Texas Tech. Now, here's what I like about this, more so than Tech being very good, because they're my pick to win the Big 12, more than the scandal and the gambling. Like, I think we'll more or less forget that at that point, I think, in November, which won't be the biggest storyline. But we talk about Baylor's front-loaded schedule. Like, I think they have a chance to be right there in the bowl discussion in the last couple of weeks of the year, if not having clinched one. I think at their best, they've already clinched a bowl game by this point. That's like best case for me. But I think they're in the hunt. And so you get this kind of mixture of, hey, we saw early in the season that they can be good, right? We've seen the positive from Baylor. You talked about the BYU game the week before. Like, that's a chance to gain some momentum, even if you lose tight. You feel good about yourself. There's a chance that that's a night game in November, because we're kind of separated the men from the boys in terms of the contenders. So you've kind of seen that you can beat good teams. You can win conference games. This is obviously the biggest test. Tech is probably still overlooking you. And there has been some animosity between those two teams here in the past. And once again, if Dave Aranda is still the coach, there's all that talk about Aranda and McGuire and the choice that Baylor made. So fascinating. That's why it's my number one. I don't want to look any further.
The Tech game was one of those where it's like it could go anywhere on the ranking. Yeah. Like, it's just it's gonna be Baylor's last home game of the season too. Mm-hmm. Like, those are the games where you, like, I don't know. I don't bet. Sorry, I know you have a lot of gambling promotions, but
producer, cut it.
But I would say that's one I would stay away from. Just like, it's gonna be one of those games that, like, I just wouldn't want to touch. And you never know what to expect at that point in the season. You never know what to expect with that kind of environment. I think about one of the last games Baylor had at home this season. You had guys taking off their shirts in the very top deck, waving it around and getting everybody excited. I think they played Utah in that one. Like, I think you can expect 10 times more of an excitement at that game. And it'll be interesting to see where Baylor's at that point of the year. And yep. I think we'll all have a lot of question marks about, like, okay, who is this Baylor team? What do we see from them? So that one was definitely one that could have gone anywhere on the top three. But when you talk about some of the biggest games, that's definitely going to be one of the biggest ones of the season.
It's got to be there. We got to get to a gripe with Baylor that needs to be resolved very soon, I think. And how they could be adding to their basketball roster in July. And a pretty good addition, too. We'll tell you about it next. Locked on Baylor. All right. Let's talk alcohol, shall we? It's something I brought up on the show a few times. Still very, very divisive across Baylor's fan base. There are people typing out comments right now about it as we speak. But it's been in the news the last couple of weeks. Iowa State, Big 12 school, comparable stadium size to you, has said we're going to allow the sale of beer and alcohol at our games, football, basketball, bring it on. And now a great report out there that was put together by Sikkim 365. Colt Barber wrote the story on it about LSU and A&M. Because I know people are already saying, like, oh, it's way bigger schools. And I know. But now we're getting some numbers here. A&M generated almost $5 million in revenue. LSU was over $3.5 million just for alcohol sales. Just for doing this thing that pretty much every stadium in America does, college or professional. Like, when we talk about every dollar counting with your revenue and constantly reworking deals and finding new ways to generate revenue, why, oh, why are we ignoring this potentially millions of dollars in revenue and not selling alcohol to the actual paying patrons and the good people that sit in the seats in the open air in our college football stadium. Is this kind of a nail in the coffin of saying it's time?
I mean, money speaks, and that speaks for itself right there. That's a lot of money. And I mean, obviously, Baylor's got a lot smaller of a stadium than A&M has, but this is still an opportunity. And I think that's what's being missed here is we're in a time where money means everything in college sports, whether we want to admit that or not. Like paying athletes and having the money to pay athletes and to be able to compete with other programs to be able to pay those athletes, this is all a part of it. And every penny you can get towards your programs and to your university to maybe help with that or just to help build the athletics department in general, like you're missing out on an opportunity to just truly cash out on what you can do. And I mean, you're so naive if you don't think people are already showing up to your games having a couple cocktails in them.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's at 11 a.m. or 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, people are going to tailgate and they're going to have fun. And so why not add that as part of your game day experience?
It's just, I think that last point was the best of all that we've talked about it over the years of like, you're not like taking this moral stance. I get it. Like, I totally get it. I went to Baylor, right? I'm not naive here. I'm not a fool, but like, I've also been to those games. I've walked into McLean Stadium publicly intoxicated, legally intoxicated. Dare I say, even under the age of 21. What's the statutes? Come and get me. But like, at the least, we can make some money off that. And I know that sounds crazy to say out loud as a good reason, but everyone is doing it. Like, it's 2026. And now when the money actually does matter, you're going to gouge them at the bookstore anyway for that hat and t-shirt they're going to wear to the game. We're not going to gouge them on concessions anymore. Thank you, Doug. We're not going to do that. But like, you don't even need to gouge, man. You just need to have this available. It seems silly. All right. Last thing, because we're behind the clock here. Last thing. Caden Powell. Remember Caden Powell?
Oh, how could I forget?
He's fun, man. Waco
yes.
native, Midway guy, mom is at the law school, teaching at the law school at Baylor. Fun story. And then Caden Powell all of a sudden needs to become a starter because Jocelyn Bodo's out for the season. And it wasn't a great year for Baylor basketball, but I would say a bright spot in that was Caden Powell. I mean, the guy was, I just thought, never in the wrong spot for most of the year. He picked up things quickly. I thought he was effective at both ends of the floor. And, the numbers were like 6 and 6, 6.6 rebounds, but was a fan favorite, was a hustle player, like absolutely filled in his role, I thought, very admirably. Well, could have him back. It didn't look like it was going to be that way. But once again, we have got, wait for it, an injunction coming in. Bam, bam. This is from Baylor Bears on SI. The newest eligibility model creates a 5-year window for all college athletes based on either their enrollment date at school or their 19th birthday. Remember, 5 and 5. With this potential ruling awaited to be voted upon Wednesday, that's today, a group effort lawsuit in Ohio that is seeking an injunction against the NCAA is expected to rule. The filed suit lists 15 student athletes, all from the class of 2022, so they would have exhausted their 4 years of eligibility, but believe they deserve one more year based on this newest decision, 5 and 5. Caden Powell is included in that case. It is headlined by Ryan Downton, not of Downton Abbey fame, but rather the attorney who won an extra year for Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt last year. I think this is actually a better route to go than the JUCO thing, the Diego Pavia, Jose Wheeler thing of like, hey, we deserve it because we deserve to make this revenue, to bring that word in here again. But these guys are saying, hey, if it's 5 and 5, then we deserve to play. We did 4 and 4. Sorry, we got our degrees. We deserve to play in here. And now he could come back, Caden Powell, and actually fulfill the role he was supposed to play as Jocelyn Bodo's backup, and provide some real depth for the Bears, who have one more roster spot left. Sydney, this could be kind of a huge addition to what's already been a pretty good Baylor basketball offseason.
Yeah, I feel like it just kind of writes itself too as just a good story. He's easy to root for. He's exactly what Baylor wants. He's a Waco guy. I remember too during like before the season started, he talked so much about how all the newcomers on the team would come to him and be like, "Where are we going to eat?" And he was a
Yes.
really good guy to be able to kind of give the tour to all the guys and be the leading example of like, welcome to Waco.
Mhm.
And I love that. So I think it'd be a great opportunity. It would be great for Scott Drew and Baylor to just have him. He was just a key guy that you could rely on. You know, maybe not
Totally.
the year Baylor fans wanted it all, but he was always in his spot. He was always there when you needed him. He had big moments at times. And I think he would even love another opportunity to come out and compete because I don't think we saw all of Caden Powell that we could have seen. So it would be another chance for him to show who he is and to give Baylor fans another taste of what he can bring.
And it feels like it's just been a while since we've had two
Yeah.
good centers, two starting quality centers. So I would love to see that. You know, I've been monitoring that last roster spot because of Dusty May's departure from Michigan. You know, there are guys that are now potentially on the market. But if you're Scott Drew, it's it's a guy it's a chance for continuity, right? Like there are probably some better players that might leave Michigan, but this is a guy who was in your program, who did a job for you. You said it, reliable. I think it's the best word for it. Who can be a depth piece and have some of the answers to the test. So I absolutely love that. We will be waiting on bated breath for that today. If you're depending on when you're listening, could already be out there. So let me know what happened in the comment section below. Thank you, Sydney. We're going to catch up with you next week because
Yeah,
you're going to be at Big 12 Media Days.
I will. Live and present.
Cannot wait. Cannot wait for that. That's at the Star again, Frisco,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Same
Yeah.
spot.
Perfect.
Hmm.
Perfect. We're supposed to be hearing from Baylor on Tuesday. We now know who's going. That includes DJ Lagway, of course. So we will catch up with you, Sydney, then. We really
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Of course. Happy to do it. And we're looking forward to it. So, we just love to be on the road for Locked Up Baylor, whether it's in the
We
car or
do.
in Briscoe. We'll bring it to you guys.
We do. I might be on a beach recording that. But we need to
I'll be
lock in.
very jealous, Cam.
I mean, you'll be at like the beach of the Big 12, the Star in
That's
Frisco.
true.
So we'll of course be monitoring that. Let us know what you guys are looking forward to at Media Days, who you're looking forward to hearing from in the comment section below. We'll have a little bit of a talk about that tomorrow on our crossover with Christian Rao and Locked On Kansas State. So we will see you then. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll see you on the next edition of Locked On Baylor.